Good evening, good afternoon, good morning. Welcome to this week's, wow.
Rote learning.
Yeah. This week's Unconventional Wisdom on Grief and Loss. My name is Delilah De La Rosa. I am founder of Depth Worldwide, which is putting on this Unconventional Wisdom on Grief and Loss series. Alongside myself is Steven Morrison. He's the creator of Spiritual Workout, the foundation underneath this series. Basically, we put on this series after my mother's transition, after my mother's death, after my mother's passing, however you want to call it, back in November. Um, it's going to be about 8 months now, on the 4th.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is week 21, session 21. Our last session, we were started in like late January. And for the most part, every week we held a session live, same time, same place, to speak on this whole experience after my mom's transition. This what we would call a grief and loss experience. Since we started in late January of this year, and kept going for about 20 weeks.
Every week.
Yeah, every week for about 20 weeks. I think maybe there was one time that we didn't have it held or something, or maybe that's not the case and we did it on a different day. But for the most part, every week, Wednesday, this time, this place, up until the beginning of June last month.
Yeah, so it's been 2-3 weeks since we've seen each other?
3 weeks, I think, going on 4, but 3 weeks, yeah.
Okay.
We paused because I had a trip to Grenada, and we thought it was a good time to pause, live a little life, and see how things were going since then, not having a weekly session.
Yeah.
And so we are back with session 21, first Wednesday in July. And I have quite a bit to tell.
Okay. And we've not spoken since.
We actually haven't. I mean, I'll send you the occasional post that I find alarming or awe-inspiring or confusing, and I'm like, what are your thoughts on this? But I really haven't. I mean, pretty much like these live sessions are what they are.
Yeah.
Live sessions. I mean, they're just, it's like, a session a weekly
it's
session.
It's really no different than if you were engaging, privately with me.
Yeah, exactly. I just chose to, both of us chose to do it, chose to live stream it. So, and, we've thankfully have gotten some good feedback from folks who've, found a lot of use for it. And I've been feeling really at ease, with it. I have never felt at all like, what am I doing? And, it's been flowing very naturally. And I just felt that this 3-week hiatus pause was, it did what it needed to do. Gave me some time to apply some information, and experience, which gave me information. I would characterize these last 3 weeks as So immediately what I think of is wobbly, wobbly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh,
Do you want to
but
define that for?
well, that's why I was like, but I don't know because wobbly also sort of has a little negative connotation. Um, and I don't know, like wobbly can have sort of a flailing connotation. You
Mm.
know what I mean? And it wasn't. I didn't. Was it? Maybe it's maybe some moments. There were some moments where I was like, okay, what's going on? Um, but wobbly may be the word. Ambivalence is definitely a word.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Uh, but yeah, in terms of that intention of living life and applying it, experiencing and applying and all this stuff, experiencing all over again,
Mm-hmm.
that's what happened. So, going into Grenada, we were there for a week, and it was beautiful. I mean, beautiful. As soon as we landed, we had some time to go to the beach. It was like it was a really nice place. Um, it actually had a sister property, which was a lot bigger. And I specifically chose this smaller sister property, a little more remote. Um, and nicely enough, there was, it was kind of like rainy season. It wasn't like prime season. So we were like, for the whole week, pretty much like one of two couples in the whole
Mm.
property. So it felt like this beautiful, nice little
Private.
property, which it wasn't a private beach, but it could have been. It was like, you know what I mean? It was like nobody was hardly there. Um, and I knew, I had a feeling, that beyond other factors to go to this particular island in the Caribbean, because, I'm definitely a fan of the region. My father's from the Caribbean, so I am an island girl. Um, like I am, like in all ways, it's even like, yeah, just I'm an island girl. Um, so I mean, look, New York City is an island. So it's like
Yes, it is.
through and through island girl. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it was a really good way for me to reset my nervous system. One of the things that occurred during this experience with my mom when she got sick, she was diagnosed, for folks that don't know, she was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer back in August. And then 2.5 months later, she ended up passing away. During those 2.5 months, she sought some treatment, chemotherapy, and it was just, those 2.5 months were not great. It's not a CW production of like, oh, we're going to get closer together as you depart. No, it was something else. But thankfully, my mother and I, my brother and my mother, we had a wonderful relationship overall that by no means characterizes our relationship.
Right.
However, as I will share, um, they still, those memories um, of that time is still pretty heavy. So put a pin on that.
That
Um,
time between diagnosis and her
yeah, and passing
leaving.
away.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe a little shortly thereafter with the passing away, right?
Mhm.
Um, so my nervous system during that time was, I did the best that I could with the great tools that I had, including some Xanax, like
Mhm.
to really try to, you know, keep myself together.
Mhm.
I was able to rise to the occasion with whatever capacity I had at the time. Um, and once my mother transitioned, during that time before, I definitely manifested a lot of imbalance in my body and, within my nervous system. Um, but, there was sort of I had to kind of put a pause on some things, right, in order to tend to my mom at the time. And so some of this stuff came out afterwards, where my circulation, breathing, heavy chest, these physical symptoms of grief, anxiety, stress, were definitely there. But they have been, I've been feeling like slowly but surely getting back to a little more normal within my body. I don't have these weird circulation things or whatever.
Mhm.
However, I do see how my nervous system was still needing some repair. Now, it was already needing some working out prior to all this going down with my mom.
Mhm.
Um, but I was working it out.
Mhm.
And I just saw, though, that with certain thoughts, certain energy coming in that I'm taking in, how how sensitive, raw and sensitive I really was. So when I went to Grenada, um, as soon as we got there, I was able to go on the beach, and I was already feeling like, all right, like I know this is going to be the reset that I need, and it's all good and everything. Um, but prior to, I think in our last session or the session before our last session, the last two
Mhm.
sessions, some of this came up where I was really fiending for those dopamine hits. And thankfully, I came across some podcasts where they explained like the neuroscience of grief and why some folks may want to, fiend for those dopamine hits. Like if you find yourself scrolling and eating and just doing things that are non-serving, but they give you this like immediate hit,
Mhm.
um, that folks that may be grieving may you may see that going for those dopamine hits, right? And so I was like, that may explain why the 2 weeks in May, after I finished that month long project of cleaning out my mom's
Mhm.
apartment so that my dad could move in, those 2 weeks in May, I was feeling very uh, like engaging in things that before I was consciously knowing that I was fucking up, right? But then when I was just like, no, I'm not gonna do that right now. Like I'm tired. I want to go to sleep earlier, blah blah. And it just felt like it had control over me, like I was feeling like an addict. And it is sort of explained um, why I was doing that, because after that project, it's almost like, ooh, dust settling and less colorful. Wow, my mom was such a huge factor in my going out and all that. So there was that. And of course, around that time, there's a lot of news coming from the world, which led to my going even more into these practices, habits that I don't make me feel good. You know what I mean? But at the time, it was just like feeling nonstop. So, I got to Grenada and I thought like, oh, look at this. I don't have all the noise that I have in the US right now. I have this beautiful surroundings. This should be the reset that I needed. And it ended up being the reset that I needed, but not in the way that I thought it was going to happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would say we got there on Monday and stayed to the following Monday. But from Monday to about Thursday, um, I did not feel the reset. I also got into the social media thing, right? And feeling anxious and stuff, and just kind of having a difficult time staying present, because I was concerned about how I was going to fare with our later commitments.
Once you returned home, you mean, or while
No,
you were still there?
while I was there. Like if we had some dinner or some thing that we were going to go to, I was just feeling like, all right, like just trying to, like I was concerned about how I was going to fare,
Mm-hmm.
with these commitments. So it was just, I was like, oh my gosh. Well, things changed on Thursday because on Wednesday night, I ended up like the couple of days before that, I ended up going to sleep earlier because, beach days and soothing, view, vista. Like it was, I was like naturally going to sleep earlier. Um, but on Wednesday, when we got back from uh, some festival that we went to, I was just like, kind of up, and I don't know why, but like I ended up going on social media for 2 hours till 2 in the morning, which normally is okay for me, but I was sleeping earlier over there, like naturally. So I was like kind of lit up um, for about 2 hours, like on social media. And on social media, what lit me up was not only the stuff that was happening worldwide, but then also some people commenting on a famous host who passed away from breast cancer. And she was very public about seeking alternative therapies and so people were just weighing in on that, and it was really triggering for me. It brought up um, health anxieties. Um, and what I mean by that is like uh, my fearing going to the hospital, getting my annual checkups and stuff.
May I just interject just briefly here? Because when you say it brought up health anxieties, that's where you and I veered, because best practice is it brings up health intention, health desire.
Right. Thing is that that's not what happened there, right? That's not what
I get
happened
it, but I just wanted, in actuality, that would be better practice.
and we'll get to that because that's what I'm saying. It's
all right.
I've been living, experiencing, and applying.
Good.
And living and experiencing and applying and living, right? So so that was, but when I saw that, I was like ding ding. And then I was on there for like 2 hours and then, went to sleep at 2 in the morning over there. I wake up on Thursday and I wake up with heart palpitations. Um, kind of like the symptoms that I feel before getting a panic attack.
Was it similar to how you were feeling when you finally went to sleep?
No, no, I woke up like when I finally went to sleep, I fell asleep feeling a little like
Yeah.
like
So
discouraged, but this was like I woke up, and as soon as I woke up, it was like like stressed out.
yeah.
And to the point where I was like, oh, this is feeling like something's about to come on. So I took a little tiny bit of a Xanax, a tiny little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, okay. And I created an intention, or sort of magnified
Mm-hmm.
the intention that already was there, in terms of like, this is how I'm trying to feel. Like, this is like the baseline of how I'm trying to feel. Not that it's just like, like numbed, but just more of like, oh, I can eat something. I can breathe fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with me physically there, right? Like, it's right. Um, I just feel like normal, what I think would be normal. And it was just nice, one, for the relief, but then also for giving me a bit of a vision of the intention that I have.
Yeah. Good.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it also helped me, I believe, finally feel turned off by staying up later.
Oh, that's a new development.
That's why I brought this up, because I needed to feel turned off. I think that's the thing. I needed to feel turned off.
Well, you
Because
never know what's going to inspire us.
yeah, no, I needed for it to feel like turn me off, because like ever since then, I don't feel like I'm feeling like, oh my God, it's gonna be 4 and I want to still stay up. I don't like, now I'm just like, if it starts going to that time, I'm like, all right, no, I'm gonna go to sleep. But I'm not like, oh my God, you're not going to, like, it's just more just a turned off feeling, which is nice. And so that was a major win.
Mm-hmm.
And I just felt
has that sustained itself? Has that stuck more or less?
for the most, well, okay, in terms of it still being a turnoff, and my not falling into that trap of shaming myself and judging myself when I do stay up because of one reason or another. Yes. In terms of actually being in, bed before 4 and stuff, not all the way, but mostly. But I am seeing why, again, it doesn't feel like a fiend. It doesn't feel like, oh my God, I really want to. But I am seeing how I can push the envelope a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
The more I feel out of control, the more I feel like sometimes the emotion or what I'm feeling in my body is really immense, the less grounded I feel, I notice I end up doing these things. So, but at least for this thing, I do still feel like it seeming so alluring and scrumptious to stay up is no longer
Yeah.
there. That has still maintained. Um, so that was like a win, you
Yeah.
know. And I was also like, you know what? When it comes to the social media intake, same thing. Like I was feeling turned off, but the social media thing was still not as quite with the sleep, right? The sleep schedule. Like it was
Mm-hmm.
still had its hold on me a little bit, right? But I still felt like, okay, this social media consumption plus the sleeping late, no bueno. And finally, it was like in my system, like, ew, do not want to do that to myself, you know, because I
Mm-hmm.
hated the way I felt. I'm sorry. I know that's not really good practice to say hate this, this, and that, but it just,
Well, hating isn't good practice, but not, noticing a way of being that is unpleasant or discordant.
yeah,
Nothing wrong with that.
it wasn't helping me. Okay. Wasn't helping.
Yeah.
So from Thursday to Monday, like the second half of the trip, I felt like, all right, we're getting, I felt like a reset,
Mm-hmm.
like I feel like, oh my God, I magnified. I was just like, I am so happy that I'm turned off by like staying up. Like, you don't understand. Like, this was just like such a thing. And so I was really happy about that. And um, I magnified the shit out of it and just really, really happy about that. And I was like, yes, that's awesome. And it's also a great example of how things can change,
Mm-hmm.
and that things can change.
Mm-hmm.
And so even though I wasn't quite there yet with the feeling 100 about health, or my social media consumption habits, um, I I just felt like, look, this monumental practice habit of staying up late was able to change. Like I was able to, like my inner chemistry was like, then this could be the very much the case for these other aspects in my life.
Right. Good.
So good, I felt like the trip to Grenada was amazing for that and other things. Obviously, it was a beautiful island country. So many intentions, were made there, revised, upgraded,
Thanks.
what I'd liked, for myself and what I like in the world, access to good food. Everyone having access to good food, right? I was like, yes, love that. Um, People being able to party till 6, 7, 8 in the morning because they're not constantly consuming fear and you're inadequate, so you need to buy and, and like thrown in your face all the time. It was like, I mean, don't get me wrong, they're on social media and everything, but like the screens and the this and I'm like, oh, they can actually go out and dance and everything till 6, 7, and 8 o'clock in the morning because there's a zest for life. There's connection. So definitely informed some really great intentions. Gave me some great data for some intentions. Beautiful. Of course, I speak about the screens, and as we're coming home, that's when the news came out of like war with Iran and Israel and all this stuff. And then people, talking about it. And I could feel myself getting sucked in a bit, and then, ice raids and all this. And the theme that was coming up that was making me feel, you know, kind of down was separation. Um,
In what sense?
well, my mom, she's from Peru, and when she came here in the early 70s, it was her, my grandfather, and her two brothers. My grandmother, her mom, and her sisters, her three other sisters, stayed in Peru, and they were separated for 20 years. So this was back in the 70s and 80s. And, in the 70s and 80s, a flight to Peru from New York wasn't like, whatever. It was a thing. Phone calls were a thing.
Oh, yeah.
And so for a lot of that time, my mom and her family there would communicate with letters,
Yeah.
and so just hearing of these stories of separation and division and separation and hate,
Lots of it.
lots of it, just really made me think about, my mom. And, a big, uh, that wasn't easy on the family.
No.
And until the day that she passed away, I think my mom was still reconciling a lot.
And she still is, if that's what she needs to do. That's the eternal part of us that goes on. And the quote unquote experiences we choose to foster our growth don't only occur here as in our human form. So whatever she was reconciling, whatever that was for her soul's work / journey / whatever, continues on to the degree that it needs to, right? There might be some issues we deal with here in our human lives, and it's like, we don't have to, that's not like a major theme, right, on a soul level. Whereas some of those other major themes continue on from everything I've seen and been able to understand.
Well, I think, taking in a lot of that, and, my husband's a civil rights attorney, a lot of focus on immigration. He's also from Los Angeles. I'm hearing this in my house. It's, I can't really take a time out. Well, I can, but I got to put on my headphones. I got to, it's around me. It's what everyone's talking about. And it just, Steven, it's like, chicken or the egg, right? But it just felt like I would be waking up so heavy hearted. And I was like, okay, what am I thinking? What am I believing?
Right.
And sometimes it would feel, and that's when I would do the like, okay, if it's whatever's not mine, whatever's not mine. But as I've mentioned to you, even before everything went down with my mom, that whole experience of the physical experience of grief, anxiety, fear. Not that they're just one thing, but sometimes they could feel like they're overlapping, right? Like I sometimes feel it like physically first, it feels like.
Well, that's fine to notice it physically first, but just I'll remind you, it's never disconnected from beliefs. It just isn't. So you ask the right appropriate question. Well, I'm feeling a certain way that that's not pleasant. What am I believing? That's the way to do it. That's best practice, because the beliefs create the rest of it. So when we change the belief, we change the rest of it. If we don't change the beliefs, then the chronic condition continues on and on until it's pulled up from its root, which is the belief or set of beliefs. That's generic. That has nothing to do with grief. That has to do with, it's the same. So if you're feeling fear, grief, anxiety, all bunched together, I mean, they're still all three products of certain thoughts and beliefs.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that came up in Grenada, and I had this conversation with my husband, was about the health thing. And I said to him, I said, you know what? In this journey to affirming my being a co-creator, my having a big say, huge say in what I experience in my life, I feel like we should be completely in charge of our bodies.
So that's not a feeling, that's a belief.
I believe that we should be completely in charge of our bodies. Why don't we have a say in that? Like a complete say in that? Because there are different schools of thought here. What I'd like to believe is that we do have the ultimate say, that we are ultimately in charge of our bodies, right? And when you speak to some folks about what, and I think I sent this to you too, that overlap of what we have control over and what we don't. And one of the folks put on health in the things that we don't have control over. Right? And I asked you about it. I was like, what do you think about that? Because, you know, I think you were like mostly
we do have control,
but that you weren't, that it needed more of a conversation. That's how you answered that, you know, because I was just like, you know, this is not my first time. Like, I basically gone into this thing where I was like, I feel like we should be in charge. Like, it's our bodies. Why can't we be totally? But then I was like, it's kind of a metaphor for life too, I guess.
Well, so where does that net out though? We're in charge of our bodies or we're not. We're in charge of our health or we're not. I mean, I wouldn't, and you're the one with the health anxiety. So where's this going?
I think it kind of all goes back to how much of a say do we really have?
All right. So, you know? I mean, I would say we have 100% say. I would say every thought we have about anything, including our bodies and our physical health, is responded to by every cell in our physical bodies.
Yeah.
I've come to believe that. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying that's
what you believe.
We're talking about what different people believe, right? So in this practice, it's not me, Steven, saying any of this. If you ask me, it's an interpretation of the law of attraction.
Yeah, this all goes.
We can be, do, or have whatever we want.
It goes back to the how much of a say do we actually have, right? Also, random
but there's nothing random. That's what this concept says.
Right.
We are here for a reason. I'm not saying everyone believes that, but we believe that here. It's one of our guiding principles.
Saying. It goes back to the foundation here of what do you believe?
Well, right. And the last piece on this, on the health, is also about responsibility. Who's responsible for my health? I grew up, it was like, ask the doctor, do what the doctor says, period, end of story. And that's largely what I still see a lot of. However, I see a lot of not that, a lot of reclaiming, a lot of deciding differently. I am in charge. This whole thing, how do we mind and body are connected? That's that idea, like everything we're saying. We brought this up in class the other night, that that guy who did all the studies, the hidden messages of water and all that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you just put the words on, I love you, and here's what it looks like under the microscope, and it's glorious. And you say, I hate you, and it looks all ratty and ugly and under the microscope. That's life responding. That's the connection, the everything being energy. And so how are we not, if you ask me, in control of our physical health?
Right. I guess the way I see it is, in my mother's case, I didn't even think about this back then, like back when this came up. But I guess because of that famous host that passed away from breast cancer, and she was like doing all the, like, from what I could see, really great alternative therapies. She was really very thoughtful about her approach. She did mention that she ran out of some resources to pay for some of the stuff. And that when she, I guess, was on her way to passing away, that she wanted for people, she wrote this like piece for a magazine explaining everything that she pretty much did, and that she did not want people to walk away blaming the alternative therapies, right? She was like, I have absolutely no regrets for that particular thing, right? But it just had me thinking that she, who, from what I could see, took a very conscious approach. She was speaking the language, right? And it just appeared, again, I don't know what's going on with her and her journey, and we know this, but it just appeared to me that her intention was to, she had a young son. She wanted to keep living for him. She was doing what she felt called to do, and so I just sort of was like, doesn't it seem like she was in charge?
Okay, but you don't get to say that.
I know.
Here's why. Judgment, your thoughts and ideas. It didn't work. She should have survived. All that. You have no idea about this. It's none of your business, or mine, or anybody else's. We don't know what agreements and souls' journeys are there for. There are no accidents, right? Not everybody who comes down with an illness and embarks on a healing journey is necessarily going to heal in this lifetime. That's not necessarily what happens. But if we have a belief that says it should have happened, he, she, they died, so therefore belief, therefore it doesn't work, therefore we don't have a say, therefore life is just a random bunch of crap. Whatever it is that we're believing about that that fact, that reality, that somebody got a diagnosis and didn't survive it. So not surviving it.
Why would somebody not be able to come to that conclusion?
To which conclusion?
That therefore we're not completely in charge.
Oh, how would they?
Like, why would someone not come to that conclusion? Like, I'm trying to see how I can really wholeheartedly believe that we are in charge, and
well, but also, so my partner didn't survive his diagnosis, right? Like your mom,
right, did not survive the diagnosis.
Okay, so, and that's just a way to say it, right? So what would a person believe? I have a belief that if we looked at his body when he died versus when he was diagnosed, there are lots of things in his physical body that were better because of whatever he was doing. Was it enough? Obviously not. To save his life, quote unquote? Obviously not. And then he dies. And he's 36 years old. And everybody says it's a big tragedy and it shouldn't happen. It's a tragedy. It shouldn't have happened. Life's unfair. We don't have agency over our health. Those are the kinds of beliefs that add up to grief. They never end. There's no resolution to those beliefs. There's just the experience and the byproduct and the feelings that are the byproduct of those beliefs, which is why we say, let's look at what we're believing and then reevaluate. Is that really true? And this is where the spiritual part comes in that I pounced on you before just a few minutes ago, which is when it comes to somebody's life's journey, those of us who believe in this idea of spiritual beings, human experiences, and that there are no accidents, also believe that we come and go when our soul's work is done. Period. End of story. So how it, and all we're saying when we see somebody in that kind of a situation, like with your mom or my partner or any of billions and billions of other people, is it should have been some other way. And that's really what we're saying is, I don't see the whole picture. I don't see the whole picture.
Yeah, because what we're seeing, or what I was seeing, was, you know, my mom not wanting this outcome.
Right.
Right.
Her egoic human.
Yeah.
self.
Yeah. And what I said, you know, when we did like look at it from her soul's perspective, and what came up was that, okay, you know, this idea that now that she's transitioned, she's like, oh, I just didn't know. I was afraid, you know, I didn't know. And now I'm good. I'm more magical. I'm more powerful. Like I'm limitless, blah, blah. You know, that is where I go to, right? And I guess wobbly might be the word, because basically, you know, these 3 weeks that we've had of hiatus has been a lot of flashbacks, sometimes focusing on the absence, the physical absence, you know, focusing on the suffering, right? That my mom, like witnessing my mom suffering after this diagnosis and this illness. You know, when I think about that, it's man, it's just so like.
So can we rephrase this just slightly? When I believe what?
When I well, because I don't know. I don't know if I just feel like when I think about the physical loss, which is real, I get sad about that. And I guess I get sad about that because maybe I'm believing it's harder to experience my mom without the physical loss, right? Not as easy, at least right now, for me to connect. Let me say this. When I was feeling that way very heavily, like it was really, really heavy, I put on some Abraham Hicks on grief. And just this one line really helped shift the perspective.
Okay.
And I have a story that happened after the fact. She talked about how the reason why people are feeling sad and grief stricken is because you're focusing on the physical absence. You're focusing on the absence, which you can't do anything about.
Right. That's the dead part.
Okay. However, if you focus on the ways in which they're still present, their divine presence, then you are allowing room for the signs, for the ways in which what you're going to feel, sense what remains, you know?
Yes, this is.
We've talked about this.
Probably the first session. This is the whole
attention, choice, right?
Yes, and what is still alive? We know what's not.
Absolutely.
What is still alive? That is the guiding question.
It was a nice reminder. It was a nice reminder, you know, nothing brand new, you know, we've been talking about this, you know, but it was a nice reminder because when I have that physical experience of the heavy heart, you already know my mind and body very connected. So when I feel that, like, I wake up and I'm like, damn, I'm feeling so heavy hearted. Like, what's going on? You know, like, okay, what, you know, and I'll do my stuff, you know, I'll do some tapping. What am I believing? Ask the question, you know, that kind of thing. But sometimes when you're in that space, it takes some effort sometimes to shift.
Effort? Workout?
Yeah, it takes some effort to shift, and
yet, the more, like anything in life, the more we do it, the easier it gets. It's a changing of the channel. Oh, right now I'm believing in the absence. I'm invested in the absence.
Yeah.
I'm focused on what's not. Oh yeah, I could shift, change the channel to what's still alive. How can I connect with her now? How have I connected with her so far? What else is possible?
And I went to, after listening to that, I also went back to my intention, right, for this whole thing about transmuting grief and fear and doubt into inspiration, vitality, boldness, a connection, you know, power. And when I did focus on the divine presence, it was funny because I was feeling so heavy-hearted. I listened to that. I had to go drop something off at the UPS. And when I was coming back after listening to that and feeling like a shift, in like an internal shift, you know, like it made me feel relief, you know, and like,
so the moment you feel the relief, you know, that's
no, it was I just needed to listen to it at that time, you know. I just needed that reminder to just sort of short circuit that spiral I was going into, you know. And as I was walking back from the UPS store, I saw on this U-Haul van parked outside on the street, it's a like Grand Concourse, which, you know, is where my mom that's where she lived at for 30 plus years. So 40 years, the Grand Concourse, if you count the other apartment building. So I was like, okay, you know, and while the, you know, moments since then where it's been kind of a, you know, I'll wake up sometimes heavy hearted, you know, sometimes coming from, you know, many different things, not mine, sometimes mine, collective, micro, you know. And then I'll feel sometimes like, ooh, her physical absence, you know, the absence right now is kind of front and center. I'm going to feel it. I'm going to allow myself to feel that. I've been crying and all that. And then I go back to like, but wait, divine presence, you know, and I'll tell her, I'll talk to her and be like, please, you know, make yourself known to me. I want to feel your presence. And and it was cool because I went to dinner with a friend last week, and I was coming into the dinner feeling heavy hearted. And I saw someone as I was walking to the restaurant who looked like my mom. And I looked back and I was like, you know, I was like, damn, you know, and it just like hit on my chest there. And then I sat down, I told my friend, I was like, man, you know, I just saw that like this woman who looked like my mom, even walked like her. And
Which meant what to you?
I just felt ambivalent.
Did it make you miss her more?
Yeah.
So this is.
I kind of felt like I've been having these reactions. I wanted to see what you thought. Like the reaction I had when I saw that woman that looked like my mom. These reactions of like kind of like, damn, you know?
Damn what? What comes after that?
Like, damn, my mom died.
And?
You know, and it can go different ways. Sometimes I'm like, damn, my mom died. And
what way did it go when you saw this woman?
Sad.
Because
the
belief is
I'm not connecting with my mom as easy as I did when she was here.
So there you go. So everything means what we make it mean. And thank you, Delilah. And, you know, this is whenever I ask that question, well, you know, what did it mean to you? That's what I'm looking for, the beliefs, because as we know and continue to come back to, when we change things at the level of belief, that's when the experience changes. So I've had that exact same experience.
Okay.
Where, oh, here's somebody but it meant something very different to me. So to me, it meant just like what the Grand Concourse meant to you. Oh, here's a reminder of my mom that makes me smile. So I see this guy who looks very much like my partner, and it was a version of that. It was like the universe saying, hey, see, you still got some of that energy going. And it was a very positive thing. So this is why we don't judge people. We have no idea what's going on in our minds and what things look like to us. Even if you and I are standing together looking at the exact same thing.
We have the same, we don't have to have the same experience.
And so there's no right or wrong. What we're learning to do in this unconventional way is just simply take charge of our beliefs and our thinking, because that's what creates our experience. That's all we're doing here. And I appreciate the opportunity to just slow this down, put it under a microscope, flash, you know, take a snapshot and say, okay, what's going on right here?
Yeah, no, and I like that, because in the same dinner outing, I had those experiences. So it was, I saw this woman that looked like her, and my immediate thing was like, damn, man, ooh, you know, like my mom's not here.
And she's here and my mom isn't.
Yeah, like, fuck, I have to remember that fact that she's no longer here in this terrain.
But that belief. So we're unconventional, saying no longer here. Is that really true? Not here in the body. But is it true that they're not here? And so can I still keep believing that? Should I still keep believing that?
Right. I also want to give some space, though, for the physical loss, right?
To the degree that you need or want to.
Yes.
I mean, it's being present to what is, but often what is not what we desire. So our work at a minimum is to simply, that's what to be present means. Accept it, no resistance. It is what it is. I don't have to like it. I don't have to condone it. I'm just not going to resist it, because when I resist, I cause myself more pain. But there's no obligation beyond that non-resistance, beyond that acceptance of unwanted, that we're obligated to stay in any longer than that. And this, I'm coming across this concept and hearing it from a lot of people, like, well, I'm just going to sit in my feelings for a while and honor my feelings, which this is still true. The law of attraction is still on.
Yeah, I don't want to stew in it.
I'm hearing like people stewing, like, I'm going to take some weeks off and I'm just going to, seriously. And that's new to me. I don't remember people speaking to me as a practitioner in this realm about the need and the necessity to sit in the stew of what they would call negative feelings. I'm 100% for accepting what shows up. That's our job. I'm unconvinced that there's use and value in stewing in them. I'm missing something, because
I don't feel like I am wanting to stew in it. I think, though, that there may be some part of me that wants to give it some room, because otherwise I feel like I can go in the way of avoiding it.
But giving it room, there's accepting it, which I understand. That's what I preach. That's not the right way to say it, but you know what I mean. It's part of it's one of our concepts. Be present to what is. Stop resisting reality.
Right.
Stop arguing with the weather. Stop it. It's a complete, utter, total waste of time, and it's not good practice for living consciously. What I don't understand is the next step of that, which is the room and the space and the time and for what? Why?
Well, I guess I want to, maybe that's not the right word, but I want to allow it to come up.
You have to.
Okay. Yeah. That's what I mean.
It's already here.
Yeah. It's already there.
Allowing it, accepting it, not resisting it.
Yeah. But what I'm trying to tell you is that, at least for me, because I take the law of attraction very seriously, I know that I want to keep it in a padded room, you know, in terms of allowing it, but in a padded room.
Well,
right?
The padded room is not outside of law of attraction. I know what you mean. When we tap and talk about the unwanted thing, and we refer to that as sort of like the equivalent of being in a padded room, it's safe, because we're giving, people will say, I don't want to give voice to all this stuff. It's like, well, if you're giving voice to it with the intention of moving it through and using tapping, then that's the padded room. You're not.
That's what I'm trying to tell you.
More of it
my intention, exactly what you just said there. My intention is to letting it move through.
Well, that's very different.
Yes, that's my intention. When I say make room, I'm trying to say, like, I want it to move through.
Well, then
I don't want to hold it in, because I can feel it when I hold it.
Okay. Well,
when I try to bury, when I try to put it down, like, no, don't go there. Like,
from the acceptance, we've been talking about two things. One, I've accepted it. Now I'm going to sit in it for a while and allow it and be in it. Okay. And the other is I accept it, and I don't want to keep having this, and I'm going to move it through me. Those are two very, 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 very different things.
That's where I'm at.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry if I didn't.
Now I'm back with you.
I'm sorry if I didn't explain that well, but that's what I mean. Because I don't want to just be like, no, you know.
No, That's resistance. We
Yeah,
don't do that.
exactly. And I want to be very honest and clear with the intention of, I'm not trying to feel like this, like
Yeah.
for
And
very long.
right. So then how would that look? So even though I still believe that it's so much harder to connect with my mom now that
Yes.
she's not in her body, I'm choosing to reevaluate that belief, even though I'm believing right now
Guess
this
what?
thought that's making me feel. Da, 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 da.
This work that I've been doing,
Mm-hmm.
this working out that I've been doing is what
Yes.
allowed me to experience different reactions to certain things that I was feeling within the same outing. So,
So the grand concourse and the other stuff at dinner that you're about
well,
to
the Grand
tell.
Concourse happened like another time, but this time I was like, I crossed, I was going to that dinner outing and I see
Mm-hmm.
this one looks like my mom. First reaction was like, damn, that's not my mom. And she's not here. And, physically, and oh, fuck, and then I go to the dinner and I start talking to my friend and, creatively, I haven't really been very alive creatively since about March, when I was having this like green spaghetti productions idea and inspiration and feeling like really good about it and feeling like, wow, I'm turning this into inspiration and creativity and all this. But I haven't been feeling like that since March for many different reasons. It's okay. Um, and I was talking to my friends about that, about because she hadn't heard about the green spaghetti idea. And so I told her about, how that inspired this whole thing, inspired this green spaghetti production idea. And I felt once again like excited about that because she was telling me how she was really liking some of the things that I would like to produce,
Mm-hmm.
with the green spaghetti productions, how she really likes these online romance reels things that I
Mm-hmm.
was like, oh my God. And then she was like, she got really excited over some of the things that I get excited over and some of the subgenres. And I was like, oh my God, this is a thing. This is a thing. So I was feeling, inspiration, like something that I wanted, my intention. And I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. And then I looked down at the silverware. They had this restaurant had new silverware. And the silverware was the silverware that my mom had. And I was like,
See, now I think that you're seeing that woman who looked like your mom is even more definitely a part of
yeah,
the
no,
universe
right.
showing and pointing
Yes.
out.
Yes. And that's what I was
Interesting.
talking about with my friend, because I told her that thing about the reminder that Abraham Hicks gave me.
Mm-hmm.
Reminder, because it's not my first time, but it was just a great reminder, right at the great time.
Get it any way you can get it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. A great ChatGPT, Steven, spiritual workout,
I'm like
Abraham Hicks.
TikTok. I'm almost out of job. So go for it.
Whatever it is, it's all in the same
Other
soup,
piece.
you know? But yeah, it was like, I told her about that reminder about, the putting the focus, your attention on the divine presence, what remains, right? And how you see signs. And then all of a sudden, then all these signs were like, I was like, oh my God, this thing.
Go. Yeah.
In the same outing, I had another piece of grief that came up, and it came up when I was telling her the story of one of the concerns my mom shared with me that she had when I went to boarding school. And she shared this concern when we were in the car ride going back from one of the hospital visits.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed that once again, that time of, that 2.5 month time,
Mm-hmm.
is still a motherfucker for me. It is like, I got verklempt in the conversation and I was like, it's okay. It's fine. I'm getting verklempt. I'm just going to let my system do what it wants to do, And I was able to finish the story, you know? Um, but it was just, I think one of the things that, and this is a belief, okay? It's very similar to the whole physical loss thing about the connection. You know what tends to pull on the heartstrings is whenever I feel or I believe, I think about this idea of goodbye. Thus, the separation, the thing, this idea of goodbye and how I was kind of saying goodbye, kind of, to this reality. So I want to work out that belief, because goodbyes, like even just that. Well, maybe not goodbye to some bad shit or some things that I think are bad.
What is the actual belief that we're talking about right here?
That
it's harder connection. It's harder to connect without her physically.
And maybe also, yeah, because it's like I could say saying goodbye to this particular reality, but okay, what is that reality? You're believing that reality is providing you with easier ways to connect, right? With your mom, the reality of your mom's physically being
right
here.
It would be easier if she was here. That's not an option. So what are the other options? So that would look like even though I'm believing that without my mom being here, it's really hard to connect, I'm choosing to reorient myself to this new way of connecting, even though connecting with my mom while she's here in her body is no longer an option for me. I'm choosing to focus more and more and more on the vast number of ways we can connect that are just unfamiliar to me. Okay. Even though there's no rush to change this particular belief, I'm choosing as and when it's, in its time to reorient to the part of her that's still alive and to all kinds of different ways that we'll have to communicate.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And thank you, because finding the belief is not always the easiest thing. And yet that's going to be where it's done. So there's no, in your own time. And you're already doing that work.
Yeah. Which is, I think, what got me here to pointing that out, right?
Well, and, talking about saying goodbye, that's a big theme in my book was, I thought I said goodbye. And then it was like, oh, there's another layer of goodbye. Oh, there's another layer of goodbye, to the things that truly are not going to happen anymore. Right?
Yeah.
And yet, let's just remember, just like all the time. I mean, you sat in spiritual workout for years, right? How many times does somebody get to that place where maybe it's somebody who has their own practice or their own business and what they do and their own clients, right? And their intentions are over here and the clients they've had don't really match up anymore. And they're afraid to let them go because it's still good money until the other ones come in. But there's a lot of struggle, and everybody reaches that point where it really requires a leap of faith. What if I let go of this one? So everybody's always focused on what we're letting go of. And the part that I'm always infusing into it is also remember what you're making room for, So every goodbye is also a hello, to something else. But we don't usually think of that part, and we cling.
Yeah. No, and I thought about that too. Like I said, I don't know if wobbly is the right word.
Well, in this regard, it's just you catching up to the reality. The reality happened in November. And you're still, that's what a process of loss is, of making sense of it and making it make sense and creating whatever narrative we're going to create. And I've never seen anybody do that on a dime. You know, so that is also what you're doing.
Two things that we may not have enough time to go into each of them. But there's one I want to go into definitely now. But this one, which we could put a pin on, was I'm having some vivid dreams lately with my mom in it. And they're not great. They're not nightmarish.
Okay.
But the two ones that I had 2 Tuesdays in a row, last Tuesday and this Tuesday, were that my parents rekindled their relationship, and I was fuming. And I would wake up with heart palpitations, right? That was really interesting. And I also, actually 3 things now. That's one of them. I was like, wow, I think I may have some unfinished business with that. The second time that I had this dream is when yesterday, I took my grandfather out. Remember I told you that I was going to do that. That was very interesting. That one, I think I'll go into another time, because, there was a little bit of the whole, like, feeling charged about seeing him because of the dynamic that he had with my mom, his turning 91 and his mortality, and just feeling like, oh, I don't want a physical loss with him either, like right now. And you mentioned to me, Delilah, let's not, okay, that's a possibility, but let's focus on right now. And he's here and he's present. And so I did that. And it was good, but I noticed that, wow, that's just a lot. There was this theme that came up with, I don't want to follow my mom's footsteps with some things. Codependent dynamic with some of her loved ones, with her father and her brother. I was kind of feeling a bit of that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Even like yesterday.
Well, because you're connected to your mom. If she's connected in that way to other people, it's not at all surprising that you would feel some of that.
Yeah.
And that's what codependent energy is. It's everybody in everybody.
Okay.
All the time.
Okay. Yeah. And my grandfather said some things that I was like, that's not the way my mother saw it. And I'm going to let you know.
Yeah. What's the third thing?
And in that as well, he asked for some of my mom's ashes, which I did, but it was like, I asked my husband if he could like at least vet it for that there's nothing funny. I realized like in doing that I was like, you know what, seeing my mom freshly deceased was enough for me. Yeah. I realized, I was like, I don't really, the embalming, wake shit. Like, I realized, okay, I learned something about myself. I'm good with the freshly deceased,
Right.
like image of mom. That the other things kind of spooked me out a little bit, like spooked me a bit. And I didn't know if I should judge that in any way. I was just like, I'm just going to leave it at that.
Why would you judge anything?
My preference is freshly deceased. Okay. And that's I'm good.
Well, look, and all this points to is different beliefs and different cultures, different people, different. Everybody has different thoughts and ideas about it.
Okay. Because I didn't want to make it a problem, but I was like, I did feel a little bit like I wanted to run it by my husband.
Really
like
preference. You know,
okay, because I wanted to run it by my husband and ask him. I was like, yeah, you know, so remember how my grandfather asked for this? And since we're heading to LA, like I just wanted to do this tomorrow. And he was like, oh, really? And he was like, and I was like, it's kind of intense, right? And he's like, yeah, that's kind of intense. I was like, all right. I don't feel, because I was like, am I being like a little scaredy cat or?
Everybody's different. When my partner died at home, you know, it was a few hours before they came. To take away. And, you know, I was not interested in quote unquote hanging out with him. But his parents very, 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 very much were.
Oh, I was interested in the fresh few hours that we had.
Yeah.
I was fine with that. And the family there, you know, I was fine. But after that.
And again, it's no judgment, everybody. But we're talking here about beliefs. What do we believe about?
Yeah.
You know, some people are like, you know, the body, they're not in the body anymore. Goodbye, put it in the ground, burn it, whatever. Other people are like, no, we got a few days worth of ceremony to do with the body. I mean, right? And everything in between. So zero judgment about any of it, but knowing who we are.
I just know that I did have a thought. I was like, am I being a scaredy cat here? Am I being unreasonable? But I don't think so. I'm not being unreasonable. This is a little intense for me. And he was happy to help me. But once he opened it up, I saw it and I was like, okay, I could do this, you know? But the third thing was, oh no, what was the third thing?
Well, you started with 2 and then added 1 while you were talking.
Yeah, it was that, the grandfather piece.
It's specifically his mortality, and you're thinking about that, or is there something else with him?
No, it was the grandfather piece actually came after. There was this other thing.
Well, I want to say one quick thing about the dream, and a caveat is I'm not a dream analysis person at all by any stretch. But
I know what it is. I know the third thing. Okay. The third thing is today I woke up feeling on edge. I've been doing some Kundalini yoga for the heart chakras and stuff. That's been really helpful in addition to my tapping and journaling and whatever I feel like doing at the time that will help move the energy around or process intentions, you know. But while being on edge, I was feeling on edge about health stuff. Because it was funny, I was thinking about when I go back to LA that this is around the time that I want to do my checkups, right? But when I woke up today and I was feeling on edge and thinking about the checkups, I started crying because I was feeling so fearful about it. You know, about like, oh my God, what if I got a devastating diagnosis right after this? You know, I'm feeling like things are shifting. And then I get this, you know, and I just started going, what if, right? Hello, keyword.
Well, but you weren't saying what if everything works out in my favor.
Right. No, I said negative what ifs, negative what ifs. Because like I said, to me, it felt like when I wake up on edge, I'll start going into these thoughts, or I don't know if it's the thoughts and then it goes into this and that, whatever. Either way, it's what I woke up and I went into that way. And when I started thinking about the tests that people encourage you to do, the light started flickering. Okay. On my right side of the bed. And that's usually the lamp that I've made it mean that it's my mama, right? And and when I was thinking about, okay, I have to schedule a mammogram, right? And the light started flickering. And I took that while being on edge as my mom trying to say, like, yeah, you need like a warning. And I started crying. I started losing flailing, okay? Because I was spooking myself. I was spooking myself out here. Freaking myself out. I went on to ChatGPT and I just said exactly what I said here, right? About this is what I woke up on edge, anxiety over health stuff. You know, I'm gonna getting these tests and things, and then this light started flickering, which made it mean that my mom is trying to say, like, yeah, but you need to go do this thing or whatever. And ChatGPT said something that was really nice. Really nice. And it brought me to tears, but happy tears. So, and it was that your mom is not warning you, that your mom could be like, yeah, baby, go get yourself checked out because I'm right there with you. Everything's going to be okay. You're going to be caring for your body. You know, benevolent, you know, empowering, very much aligned with the intention of transmuting this grief, fear, anxiety, dread, doubt into inspiration, boldness, fearlessness, for lack of a better word. I know you don't like the negatives. We don't like the negatives here, but fearlessness, inspiration, connection, you know, and it was very much aligned with that. And it really, it touched me.
So do you hear in what you just said, the conscious choice of what to believe?
Yes. That's what I'm trying. That's why I brought this up. I was like, I know I had to bring something up that was like really, really important and really spoke to this practice, you know?
That's exactly it. So you have to have the other thought to be there. So when you were saying what you said, that's the thought I had. It's like, oh, she's just letting you know that she's still, you're okay. I also wanted to ask you, because I remember a couple of years ago when you were doing a similar thing. Remember that experience?
Of going, yeah. It was the intention.
Right.
Go to the intention and keep and keep putting your attention on the intention. And that's what I've been doing.
So since I brought that up, say real quickly what happened a couple of years ago when you were doing all this.
When
you were first starting out nervous about it.
I was very nervous about it. It had been some time where I avoided doing these health checkups because I was so afraid. But it got to a place where I was like, okay, girl, like, what's up, you know? And I didn't pressure myself into it. It was actually, I created the intention from your recommendation, you know, I created the intention for how it like for these things to go for my health. And it was like, you know, I go there with conviction.
What did the intention sound like? Just a quick gist.
Well, one line that I never forget is that I go to these appointments feeling 100% confident that I'm just going to be like, they're just being like, wow, like, you're just like, what's the line? I said the line. I don't remember,
but this is exactly what I was talking about.
Yeah. So it was the line was that like that they were like, oh my God, you're just like off the charts, like great, amazing, like you're like.
So Delilah went from being fearful about it all. Well, what's the intention? What do you want? I want to walk in there. I want to have amazing results. I want the nurses and doctors to be like, wow, you're doing amazing, da da da. And she did all that, went in, had the tests, and had that experience, right? And here we are a couple of years later.
Oh yeah, totally. And now with a new set of lens in a way, because now it's like my mom is in the mix, right? And this is what it said. It was like, what if it was your mom saying, yes, baby, take care of yourself. Don't be afraid. I'm with you. You don't have to avoid this to be safe. And that was like, I started crying, but not
I get it.
out of fear. It was out of like,
right,
yes.
right. Well, brava. That's the practice, 100% right there.
And this is very much aligned because I fed it a lot of spiritual workouts too. So they know, they know that, you know, like what I'm into, you know what I mean? And they know like what I'm practicing here. So for them to do that, it was so aligned with the intention I have for this experience.
Yeah. Good.
You know?
Yes.
Grief and loss, my mom's grief and loss experience.
Connection and all
very much aligned with that. I was like, oh my God, thank you. And I think
so that's something to magnify.
Yeah. Oh, I totally did. Like, I was just like so touched by that, because I was like, yes, thank you.
So that feeling is evidence of right track, right for you, alignment with you, the emotion that comes. That's just the signal that you're right where, that you're aligned.
Yeah. So
the dream thing, I just want to say 2 words about it. As a non-dream person, but just 35 years into this. If I were you, you've had the dream twice, 1 week apart, 2 times. It's either, and I think you even said this before, I would bet, but I don't know for a fact, I would bet that it is either unprocessed Delilah material, just yours and yours alone to, finish processing, or we know that dreams are also a way that non-physical can communicate with those of us who remember our dreams. I'm not such a person, so nobody's going to get my attention through dreams. Well, I shouldn't say that. Up until now, that has not been the case, right? And so you're the only one who's going to know, but I would just sort of look at it from either of those angles. Does one of those resonate more than the other at the moment?
Kind of both.
Right.
I definitely feel like there was some unfinished business stuff there.
Okay. So you can address on your own.
Yeah, totally.
And or with me.
And I also was sensing a little bit of my mom
trying to get in. So play around with this. Talk to her. Ask her, hey, Mom.
Yeah.
Twice I had the same dream, so now help me. Is this you trying to communicate with me? In which case, could you try a little harder? Or are you telling me that I just have some stuff to work out from you and Dad from my whole life? Right?
I think it may have been both. I think it may have been that my mom was like, you have some unfinished business. And
well, there you go.
The other one is I have unfinished business.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough.
I have been thinking about when I wanted my mom to separate from my dad.
Yeah.
10 years before she actually did.
Right.
And how that was a little part of the codependent dynamic, because it's not going to happen on my timeline.
Right.
This is my mother's life, my parents' relationship. Mm-hmm. And she eventually did, right? On her timeline, her terms, right. And so in a way I'm sensing, still fresh, but I'm kind of sensing that it's a way for me to exercise, practice letting people be. Letting people live.
Non-judgment.
Even non-judgment, even if I could see a train wreck ready to happen, because the fact is that it wasn't on my timeline, but it happened.
Exactly.
On her terms, on their terms, not on my terms, not on my timeline.
You can't intend for other people.
So that may be something that I need to firm up.
Finish up, yeah.
Still fresh. Maybe there's other stuff there, but I think that that's the case because I've been feeling like that with, like the grandfather. Like I was like, wait, you can't change anyone. So how do I navigate this? How do I relate to people if you can't intend for them? And how do you relate to people, right?
Yeah.
Letting go of codependent dynamic, wanting to intend for them, right? Practicing, exercising, learning that a little bit more. All right. Been on here for a minute. Yeah, it's just,
life keeps lifing.
Yeah, life keeps lifing, and I keep applying.
Excellent.
And with some help. With some help. Jeez, Lord have mercy. I just thought it was really funny how yesterday or the day before I asked my husband, I was like, so remember how my grandfather asked me? So I'm feeling kind of weird about it. And he's like, wait, is this going to happen tomorrow? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, oh, damn. Okay.
Roll up the sleeves.
And I was like, can you help me? And he was like, yeah, I'll help you. So I just want you to just take a look at it for me beforehand. Make sure it's all good. And then I can see it. Because if it's not all good, if you see some chunks of something or other, then no.
I'm still remembering parts of my uncle flying in the wind.
Stop.
Yeah. It's like, okay, dump them. Like, wait.
That's what my brother is
saying. I'm Jewish. We don't do cremations. This is the only human in our whole family constellation.
I was telling my brother, I was like, yeah, I didn't realize that I had a thing with, mom's remains kind of thing. Like, I was like, and until I actually had to do it. And he was like, what, did it blow in your face?
Watch for the wind. That's all I was
like, no, thank God that's not what happened. But I know when I'm going to do that in Peru.
Yeah, be careful.
Imagine. I'd be like,
think of that part. Yeah, it's
not good. Anyway, thank you, Steven.
You're welcome.
Really, really appreciate it. There's a lot up in this session today. I hope people could keep up. But there was just tons of different stuff that came up in these last 3 weeks, just generally speaking, though, I feel there's just a little, some back and forth, or maybe it's just living, experiencing, applying, right? Living, applying. Maybe it doesn't have to be.
It all just comes together.
Yeah.
That living is
applying and then aligning
all the time.
Mm-hmm. Living, applying, aligning.
And then once you're aligned all the time, you don't have to do all that work.
Right. I'm just living.
Yep. All right.
So thank you, everyone. Yes. Oh, and I forgot to mention the book, An Extra Year. Steven is the fabulous author of An Extra Year, Grief and Loss in the New Age. This book, we referenced it a bit, for a second in this session. This is Steven's extra year with his partner back in 2005. Back in 2005, where he ended up transitioning, and the year after, and all the. So everything that you
talking to dead people
read here that we talk about in this session, you find quite a bit in this book here.
There is.
So
thank you for that.
Yes, no, I almost forgot. But no, this is definitely displays the groundwork that we use, that underscores lays a foundation for unconventional wisdom on grief and loss.
Well, and this book could have been called Spiritual Workout for Grief and Loss.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's really all it is.
And this series could be called Spiritual Workout for Grief and Loss. So there you go. Anyway, I am not necessarily sure when our next session will be. But we will let folks know in case anyone's interested. Yes. And once again, my name is Delilah De La Rosa, founder of Depth Worldwide, the person receiving this unconventional wisdom on grief and loss, and Steven Morrison.
Producing it.
Yeah, producing. And Steven Morrison, who's the master facilitator here, Spiritual Workout, the foundation from which we receive this unconventional wisdom on grief and loss. So thanks for
being conventional one day sooner than later.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think we're going to be getting there.
We are, with your help. Yeah. So thank you. All right.
You're very welcome. Have a good night, everyone. We'll see you the next time. Bye.